Let's have a look.
Do you think that your government, Mr. Wilkinson, has adequately consulted your province on the prospect of a coastal pipeline or whatever ends up being involved in this MOU?
Well, first of all, it's pretty hard to say because nobody really knows what's in the MOU. And I think it behooves us all to sort of wait until it is announced. But I do think it's important to engage with the province of BC, to engage with First Nations that may be impacted by this project or any other project. I do know the Prime Minister has spoken to Premier Eby, but I expect that there will need to be many more conversations.
Do you think the Prime Minister should have consulted more with the Premier? And I ask that only in the framing of what Premier Eby has said to me and others, which is that he feels woefully under-consulted, that both he and coastal First Nations have been left out of a discussion that he says will directly impact both the province and those First Nations. I know that you're very familiar with both. Do you think there should have been more discussion with those two parties?
Well, look, I know there have been some discussions, and I think a lot of it depends on what is in the framework document that's released. My understanding is that the Government of Canada, and certainly the Prime Minister has said this on many occasions, is saying that the province of BC will need to be engaged in these conversations going forward as part of this whole process, and certainly the First Nations will need to be involved, and there will need to be significant support on the part of First Nations. So I wouldn't want to get too tied up in should it have been before this or should it be after this. At the end of the day, those conversations have started to take place, and they will need to take place in earnest going forward.
Premier Eby,
I don't have the clip pulled up because I'm just thinking about it now. But just to highlight the relationship between the Liberals and the First Nations, there are I forget what it's called. It's a First Nations assembly where they're in a big hall and First Nations get to go up on the stage and talk about stuff. There are times where Justin Trudeau and even other Liberal ministers that are there on behalf of Justin Trudeau would show up to these things. And the First Nations chiefs would say, hey, fuck you, man. You sit here in front of the public on cameras and you talk about how we're trying to work together, yet you've never stepped foot on our land to talk to us in our homes. You've never come to us. You always make us come to you, and then you gaslight everybody and try to make it seem like everything is good. And some of these clips in the past have gone insanely viral, and I've shared them. I wish I had it pulled up. If I was more organized, I probably would have. Or you could just take my word for it, or you can go and Google it yourself. But there are many, many times, several times, where First Nations chiefs have lashed out publicly at these First Nations assemblies, specifically at the Liberal government. Because if I'm quoting properly, I think this was in I don't think it was in 23. It might have been in 24. Maybe it was in 2023, where the First Nations chiefs accused Trudeau of never actually stepping foot on their specific band's territory to speak with the chiefs. And that's kind of weird. Like if you're the leader of a country and you're trying to go and talk to like British Columbia, you would then go to British Columbia and talk with the leaders. If you're the leader of a country and you want to talk to the American president, you would go to America, like probably the White House, and talk with the American president. Even Putin flew out of Russia to Alaska for the first time since a bunch of sanctions were put on him several years ago. Like, that's what you do when you're meeting with other people, is you go to them. And so the Prime Minister probably should have gone to meet with the First Nations people. So the First Nations people, maybe not every single band, but several bands that we've seen, don't like Justin Trudeau. But it wasn't specifically Trudeau as a person. It was the party, but probably also Trudeau as a person, because that's quite easy to do, is to dislike Justin Trudeau as a person. And now we're kind of seeing this translate into like Mark Carney, where the First Nations are like, yeah, you're a new guy, but we still don't like your party and we don't like you guys. So unless Mark Carney is able to pull out some crazy deal out of his ass, the way Trump is able to do, I don't see how First Nations are going to bend the knee to a Liberal government, which they've historically proven to dislike time and time and time again. Now, this isn't all bands. but it's a significant amount of them. And for a band chief to publicly say to the government, like on a live broadcast, to call them out and say that they don't have balls for, like, that's a real quote. You don't have balls for, coming to us. Like, you've never come to us. You're a wuss. Okay. These are real things that have been said, if I'm not mistaken. That's a lot of damage that's been done to the relationships between the federal government, the Liberal government, and these First Nations. And how does that translate into right now? Like, what does that mean? That, well, the federal government's now in a position where they need the cooperation from these exact bands and First Nations groups, and they're not getting it. Because why would they? Why would they? Would you like to cooperate with the Liberal government after they've mistreated you for so long? Probably not, right? Probably not.
Point though, and I take yours on, would have, should have, when we don't have the formal details of it announced, though many of them have already, I should say, been leaked to various media outlets. Premier Eby's point is that just the mere speculation of it, without concrete details from your government, has raised the prospect of big projects that he has buy-in on, LNG namely, because he says of the tanker ban, for example, like he says that all of this is putting that at risk, and that to him is very real. Again, I'll put to you, Mr. Wilkinson, like, should your government have done more to avoid that prospect?
Well, as I say, there have been some conversations. There will need to be more conversations. I hear Premier Eby's concern, and I think his concerns are heartfelt. And certainly he has worked very hard to accelerate the development of the LNG industry in British Columbia, which will benefit all of Canada, but certainly British Columbia and Alberta. I do think that it's important that we sit down and have those conversations moving forward and understand what those concerns are and determine whether or not they can be met. But, my understanding, based on everything that I have heard from the Prime Minister, is there would need to be significant support on the part of the province. There would need to be significant support on the part of the First Nations, and this would require, it would be significant incremental production, which means incremental emissions. That would need to be part of, made consistent with a climate plan, and I'm sure that the government is working on that.
I haven't actually heard the Prime Minister say that any additions to emissions would have to fit into the climate plan. I don't actually know what your government's climate plan is anymore. You used to say that a lot about additional oil development or additional LNG development when you held that portfolio, but your government isn't saying that anymore. Are you comfortable with that?
Well, I think the Prime Minister did say that. I mean, in the House last week, he said that the government remained committed to the targets that were established under the Paris Agreement, understanding those are very difficult targets to meet and always have been. But certainly in the context of thinking about future developments, you would have to think about the emissions associated with those and look at ways in which you can actually ensure that they are incorporated if you're going to actually be serious about meeting your climate targets.
I take your point on what the Prime Minister said in the House. What I'm confused about, and I think a lot of Canadians who are concerned about the environment are confused about, is how exactly meeting those commitments will be possible when there is a long list at the moment of what your government plans to roll back: the consumer carbon tax, perhaps a full tanker ban, no emissions cap, no more, or paused at least for the meantime, EV standards. Like, what is your government's climate plan without any of that? How do you meet those targets without any of that?
Well, as I say, what was in the budget, the climate competitiveness thing, was not a climate plan, and the government going forward is going to need to come up with an updated climate plan that includes work that I did and others have done, but will also have additional elements. I think one thing that was important in the budget was the commitment to strengthening the industrial carbon price. That is a way where you actually can get incremental emissions if you do that right. But I think it's a fair question on the part of the environmental community as to where, what does the climate plan look like going forward? And I'm sure that the Minister of Environment and the Prime Minister are working on that and will come forward with that. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a legislative requirement under the Accountability Act that was put into place when I was the Environment Minister, where we actually are able to say what we're doing, where we're tracking to, and what we're going to do if we're not on track to get back on track.
Have they conveyed to you that I believe the requirement is by the end of the year, have they conveyed to you that there will be a plan announced? Because I have seen no public record of a commitment to release that.
I have not asked that question specifically, but I mean, it is a legislative requirement. I assume that the Minister of Environment is going to bring forward something.
Do you, in principle, I mean, you're in a unique position, right? We spoke to you so frequently in both your capacity as Minister of Environment, Minister of Energy, but you also are a member of Parliament in BC. Do you, in principle, support an additional pipeline to BC's coast, oil pipeline?
Well, I don't think we should rule things off the table before we have a conversation about what the issues are. That's not just about a pipeline. That's about a mine. That's about, a port facility, irrespective. It's trying to ensure what people's concerns are. Certainly emissions is a concern, and as I've said, it will need to be made consistent with Canada's approach to addressing climate change, but there are ways to do that. But it also needs to address some of the concerns that actually underlie the tanker ban. Like, at the end of the day, the tanker ban is a mechanism. Why did the tanker ban get put into place? And the moratorium before it. Like, people forget there's been a moratorium on the West Coast since 1972. There were two reasons. One was...
and this is what's the worst. This is the worst part of Canadian politics, is you were asked a very simple question. Do you support oil and gas pipeline to the West Coast? Like, should we keep that in the cards because we don't really have a way to another feasible way to get oil and gas from Alberta to the West Coast of British Columbia without a pipeline being there? And it's a yes or no question. He goes on to deflect and talk about the tanker ban and all that stuff. And it's just very annoying. It's very, very annoying, ladies and gentlemen, because the answer is simple. The answer is, if Donald Trump and American tariffs truly are the biggest threat to Canada, okay? Like, Canada's suffering. We know this. You know this. I know this. We're suffering economically. We need to make money, and we have a bunch of beautiful liquid gold in our ground, and we have to be able to do something with it because there's a market for it. Whether we want to use it for ourselves or not is irrelevant, because people out there are begging for it. Please, Canada, please sell us your liquid gold. We love you. Please, we'll pay way more money than we should for it. We need it. And Canada's answer is, let's take a look and see if we can even get it done. And we look to see if we can get it done. And there's no actual clear-cut answer on whether we can actually get it done or not. Climate initiative, tanker ban, deflect, buzzword. It's a yes or no. Are we going to get it done? And if the answer is unanimously yes, where it should be, because our biggest threat is not Russia, it's not China, it's not aliens, it's America, American dependence. Because right now we can only really sell oil and gas to America because we don't really have a proper way of like exporting it. Not yet. We don't even have like refineries properly set up in Canada. We sell it to America for really cheap and they sell it back to us. It's the most retarded business deal I think we've ever really seen. But we have a real opportunity for a not retarded business deal to actually make real money with other countries, which you should probably support, because don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? This isn't the Easter Bunny. You got to be able to diversify. Same thing with you when you invest in stocks. Sure, invest in the S&P 500, invest in the American broad index funds, but also invest in international funds, because we know there's like a market crash that happens every 8 years or 12 years or something like that. And if and when the American market plummets, which it does historically, at least you're invested in international stuff. So if we're diversifying our trade with other countries, then if the American market tanks, or if we can't rely on them for whatever reason, which is what we're being told right now, then at least we're selling oil and gas through our West Coast ports to like Japan and Asia and whatever. We're making money. If the threat was real, and if it really was as significant as what they say it is, Donald Trump and America, that threat, then we would be doing whatever we can to get the job done. Like, if there's an intruder on your property who is trying to destroy your home, you're probably going to do whatever you can to protect yourself, right? You wouldn't be like, well, let's leave it up to a vote. Hey, mom, hey, dad, hey, brother, hey, sister. Should we take immediate action? Should we defend ourselves? Yes, yes, no, maybe. Oh, okay. Well, let's sit and talk about it as the intruder gets closer and closer. Like, if you're painting a picture for us that the biggest threat to Canada and our sovereignty and blah, blah, blah is America, then deal with it and get it done. That's it. No matter what the climate initiative is, no matter what green energy peace shit is going on, it's either a threat or it isn't a threat. Deal with it accordingly. And this level of gaslighting, this level of going in circles, false hope, talking points, buzzwords, it's very annoying. And I'm starting to see through it more and more every day. And it's actually quite exhausting. And my tolerance for it is significantly less, which is why I say it's fucking retarded, because I have no other patience to be a good little boy and say, well, this just isn't the right way. We got to deal with it another way. No, the time for those words are gone. It's fucking retarded. The liberal government is fucking retarded. That's just how it is. I'm sorry if that offends you. Go somewhere else if you want cleaner words, but my tolerance levels are gone. They're gone, because the biggest threat to this country is not Donald Trump. It's our liberal government, and my tolerance for being nice and friendly with clean words, that's gone out the window. I don't know. That's to me, that sounds absolutely fair. Or maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just losing my marbles. I don't know. Probably a bit of both. But let me know what you guys think. Are you running out of patience? Are you seeing through all the bullshit? Do you also think that the liberal government is a little cuckoo, a little bit retarded? Let me know where you guys stand on that one.